you for joining us on today's webinar. And my name is Paul Adepoju, and I'm the Community Manager for the ICFJ Global Health Crisis Reporting Forum. The forum has been the International Center for Journalists' response to the COVID-19 pandemic with the goal of bringing journalists together and enabling them to improve their skills, also learn from each other and share personal experiences. So, and part of those forum, one of the things that we've appreciated over the months leading to this moment is the diversity that is represented in the forum and the kind of members that we have in terms of the way that they carry out their journalistic works in different parts of the world. And today is not an exception. I will be having a close understanding of what it feels like to be a female journalist in two major countries, which is India and Nigeria. And I'm joined by two highly reputable and award-winning journalists that also happens to be our forum members today. I'll start with Teresa Rehman, who is an award-winning journalist and author that is based in Northeast India. She has worked for years to bring the region's different facets, diversity, and distinct ethos to mainstream media. Her work in journalism spans India Today, the Telegraph, and Tehelka, and today she edits the Thumbprint, which is the e-magazine that she launched. She's known for a quite great and matter-of-fact approach to stories, and she's also the author of several books, including Mothers of Manipur and Bulletproof. How are you doing today, Teresa? And thank you for joining us.
I'm good, Paul. Thank you so much for inviting me for this, I hope, a very interesting session. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. And also, we are also joined by a very an ambitious and enterprising, illustrious and passionate journalist who is called Amaka Okoye, whose forte is she's known for conflict and crisis reporting, and much of her coverage focuses on terrorism, banditry, and abductions in northern Nigeria. Amaka has traveled to even the region's most volatile areas, including to Chibok, where she has documented and continues to document first-hand experiences of Chibok girls that were kidnapped but they are back, and of parents that are still waiting for their daughters about 7 years on. Amaka is a fellow of the prestigious Wole Soyinka Centre for Investigative Journalism. She's also an alumnus of Thomson Reuters Foundation, and she regularly speaks on conflict reporting. Amaka, thank you for joining us today. Your mic is off. You are muted.
Apologies. Thank you, Paul, for having me.
Yeah, so Amaka, where are you based now? I know you're always in one crisis, reporting from one front to another. So where are you joining us from today? Are you back in the office?
Yes, I'm joining you from Abuja, literally. So I'm in the office behind the studio.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll start this conversation. Yes, so let me start with Teresa. Teresa, when I was reading your profile, and every time I get to see your post on my timeline, I'm always curious about your journey to journalism. So how did journalism start for you?
Well, Paul, it's very nice to see Amaka, and we have one thing in common. I'm also an alumnus of the Thomson Reuters Foundation course. I did a course on reporting HIV/AIDS in Nairobi, in Kenya. Well, journalism started very early with me. You know, I started as a cub reporter. I used to write in the local dailies or in the children's corner of the local dailies. And, you know, my mother had this huge collection of magazines and periodicals. You know, she had a shelf full of that. And somehow I used to go through them, and I used to imagine myself in those bylines. I don't know why, I never met a journalist in my life. And I'm the only black sheep in the family. Like, I'm the only journalist, first generation journalist, and there are no other journalists in the family so far. So, it was like my ambition as a child to become a journalist. And there was no mentor. It's really strange in how, and I used to really feel happy when I saw my byline in those children's corner. And then it gradually started. I did a course, and after my graduation, and then I started off. It's like it's a passion for me. I had to be a journalist. I don't know. It's like it was programmed in my brain. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So for Amaka, I remember the first time I saw Amaka. I can never forget that experience. Everybody sat in a hall, and you just came in very quiet with your phone, then straight to one corner. But when I now turned my timeline and I now saw the kinds of reporting that you do, I couldn't connect this very calm and reserved person to this journalist that is always at the front line reporting on terrorism and crisis. So before we focus on interest on terrorism, what informed the choice of TV for you? You could have been hiding your face under a byline written piece, or you could have been on radio. Why did you choose the means of media?
It's interesting, Paul, that you're asking me that question, because actually my major is radio. So I trained as a radio journalist for 3 years in Nairobi, where Teresa mentioned earlier. And for the most part, I thought I was going to end in radio. But after working in Kenya for a year and a half, I transitioned to print. I went to print. I did print for a year. And then finally, I moved to TV. So it's weird, because most times they say most broadcasters come from radio. So we owe a lot to radio. So my background essentially is radio. Before I transitioned into TV, where I must say that I'm grateful I'm doing TV, because there are certain stories. It's not like you can tell any story actually very well in any medium, but being able to tell some impeccable stories on TV is indeed a privilege. So yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the clarification, which means you can easily find yourself integrated into any medium. And so Teresa, do you also have that capability to blend into any channel of journalism, or you like writing?
Well, essentially, I'm a print journalist, and I did my course in print journalism. I specialized in print journalism, and essentially, I'm a reporter. So I don't know. I've always dabbled with print, and I have reported from one of the most difficult terrains of India. It is one of the most underreported regions of the world, I would say, the northeast of India. I report from the 8 northeastern states of the Indian Union, which is like in the periphery. Okay, it's near China, bordering Bangladesh, China, Myanmar. So this is a region which has seen several decades of violent insurgency. And the media ecosystem is still evolving. It's a and we are a region who's like, we are never in the radar of the so-called national media. We are always in the news for the wrong reasons. We are in the news for the violence and the bloodshed, and whenever there's something terrible that's happening. So, for me as a journalist, I was a representative of one of a few national media houses in the region, and I had to cover. And and for us, we didn't have too much of a choice. It was like print. I was I was reporting for a magazine, a national magazine. So I was, and I traveled all over the region with just a pen and a notebook, and my intuition. So if you mentioned about my book Bulletproof, so I call my book Bulletproof, and many people ask me, why did you call it Bulletproof? There's a very interesting story behind it. There was this conference of women in media from South Asian countries, and it was held in Lahore. And we were having a conversation around women reporting conflict. And this is something which is new to our generation, women reporting hardcore conflict. So all of us, the moderator suddenly asked me, do you wear a bulletproof jacket when you go reporting? So that was something which really rattled me. I never thought of, for us, this safety of a journalist it was never a part of our, training or discourse or so. That was the first time I realized that there are bulletproof jackets for journalists. So this is something which was such a revelation for me. And then I got to know that most foreign media, when they send their reporters to a conflict zone or even to cover a disaster, natural disaster, they train them. There are special trainings like HEFAT, hostile environment and first aid training, or those safety gears, the bulletproof jacket or a helmet, or insurance. These are things which do not exist for people like us, journalists like us reporting from the periphery. So that is why I call the book Bulletproof. In many ways, I'm trying to say that I am bulletproof, and journalists like me are bulletproof. We are bulletproof ourselves.
Okay.
So this is, you'll understand what I'm trying to say when it's like we just and I said, I'm constantly flirting with danger. When I'm reporting from the zone, this is like it's a very thin thread, it's like walking on a tightrope. So it's like, and I'm very keen to, dabble with radio or television, but there's like minimum opportunities here. And so here, it's more like, now I've seen a new kind of an evolution when you talk about COVID and the pandemic, because the big media houses, the contours of media business has changed. Big media houses, they are downsizing, they are cutting off, laying off people. So what is happening? There's kind of a counter revolution happening. Mojo, the mobile journalism. You carry a mobile phone and a mic and a small crew. A small team, they form a portal, and they run a portal. And these portals are there in nook and corners of India, and in the region that I live in, there are small portals in even small areas, and we are getting hyper local news. Earlier there was dearth of news, there was hardly anything. Now we have news from remote villages, and it's like full of news now. Okay. So I don't know how you will sift this news, whether it's good or bad or ugly. But the thing is that now we are having news. So I think this is a very interesting phenomenon happening. I don't know if it's happening in other parts of the world, but here it's definitely, so YouTube channels, blogging, and internet, this portals, news portals. They are a big thing here.
Okay, thanks, Teresa. And so talking about, I think Amaka will be saying similarities and some connections why I'm bringing you two together. And one of the things that is always striking about conflict reporting is sometimes, I don't look at things from the lens of gender, but I always see it on your page when you post pictures of yourself on the front, at the front line in crisis regions, bringing reports live. That there is always this concern about your safety. And so, what gives you that confidence? What pushes you, drives you, that makes you feel confident that this is the place that you ought to be? And I know by extension that would also inspire many female journalists that are struggling to come out of that shell, that they desire to also be at the front line like you. Amaka, what do you think?
Right. Before I answer your question, I really want to say, Teresa, I love to read Bulletproof. I'm going to look for it. And I love the metaphor that you have used. In many ways, I agree with you when you say journalists are, bulletproof. When you say, even though you don't have protection, so to speak, in terms of having the actual bulletproof, you've got your book and your pen, and it's enough bulletproof, if you like. So I wanted to chip in that. So well done. I'll look for that book. I'm definitely going to get a copy myself. And now back to your question, Paul. So recently we had African Investigative Journalism Conference of 2021, which I was privileged to be one of the journalists who had a session to speak on humanitarian conflicts and extrajudicial killings. And I will tell you for free that if I got 100 questions in my inbox after that conference, 96 of those questions are, how do you manage, reporting conflicts as a woman? And the other one, again, is your question. What assures you of your safety? Are you ever worried about your safety and all of that? And how do you do this? And I say, really, the truth is, first of all, I don't know how I do it. Whether or not people believe this, that's what it is. I don't know how. I don't have a formula planned out to say, oh, Amaka, when you go into Chibok, this is how you're going to do it. I don't exactly have any formula. It's just a question of you hit the ground and you just find yourself doing it. So, and I say, really, if you are called to do this, you will find a way, or you will be doing it. So, for instance, there are people who, of course, are my mentors. If you look at Clarissa Ward, whom we all know, Nima Elbaga, whom we all know, they're always there. Nothing has stopped them. Being a woman has not stopped them from reporting. In fact, Clarissa Ward was in Afghanistan, as we know, covering the fall of Afghanistan. She went into Kabul twice. In fact, she went during the takeover, of course, when it became very, very volatile. She went to Pakistan and was reporting from there. And then she went home for like 4 days. She's got 2 kids, a year, one is a year, and the other one is 6 months. And she's able to navigate all of these places. In fact, she had to go for 4 nights just to be able to catch some sleep, and then, of course, see her children before she returned back again into Kabul. So I say, people like this are doing this. So I'm inspired to know that, yes, I can do that and even do much more. And most importantly, that's who you are called to be. You're going to be doing it. I remember in one of Clarissa Ward's interviews, she was asked the same question. I think it was one of the interviews that she came face to face with a terrorist. She went to knock on the door of the terrorist for an interview. And, she was on one of the international media, and they were asking her, how dare you? What were you thinking when you did that? Did you not understand the amount of danger that you put yourself and even the crew in? You've got, of course, it's not just Clarissa Ward, it's not just Amaka Okoye. When we go out, you've got your camera personnel, you've got the driver, you've got the fixer in most cases. So you don't just endanger yourself alone, or you're not the only one in this palpable danger. There are others with you. And she said, look, that she never thought of it. She just says to herself, Clarissa, you have to do this, do it. So she doesn't think of it. It's much later and I say, oh my God, how did I do that? And that made sense to me because, when I get a call from the office and say, oh, Amaka, you're going into Chibok, for instance, I don't start thinking of the dangers. Oh my goodness, Chibok. In fact, when I went into Chibok this year, I had just finished from Zamfara. Literally I was in Zamfara. And I think it's Zamfara or Kebbi or Niger State. Anyways, one of it. And then I got a call from the office saying, you have to proceed to Chibok. I said, okay. The first thing that came to my head, do I have the right apparel? And thankfully, I always have, the whatever apparel that I need for the North. And I quickly, in my head, I checked, do I have, oh yes, I have 2, 3 spare in my bag. And I said, okay, that's fine. I just, called the camera person and said, look, we're traveling, we're going to Chibok. So I don't necessarily begin to think of the danger, because if I do think of the danger is there, it's enormous, it's palpable. I'm going to shrink. I'll be crippled, literally. I won't be able to get the work done. So the focus is to get the work done. My mom would say, get the work done anyways. So somehow that sinks into my head, and every time we do. So it's about getting the work done and not allowing the fear to cripple me. Yes, of course, security, depending on where we are going to, it's also most of the time if we go into some of these areas with security personnel, you call attention to yourself. So we don't want to do that. So half the time we just literally go in as common people and trusting that we will come out alive. And thankfully, all the times we've gone, we've come out alive. We've come close to.
Sorry, I don't want you to leave that point. That's how I'm coming in. Has anything ever gone wrong on the field? And can you share one of those experiences?
Things have gone wrong many times, definitely. But the one I remember two that I remember now, which is, I was totally shaken, was when we were going into Chibok. So we had traveled like maybe 3 hours into Chibok already. And we got into, because there are several checkpoints, if you're military checkpoints, if you're going to Chibok. And then we got to this military post, and the military man looked at us and said, "Where are you coming from?" That's myself, the camera personnel, and our fixer. So we said, "Oh, well, we're coming from Yola and we're going into Chibok." And he said, "Oh, no, you can't go into Chibok now." And we're like, "Okay, why not? We have to go into Chibok anyways." He said they had just sighted the terrorists, Boko Haram. So that's why people are running. Meanwhile, when we were coming, we saw people cycling, faster than normal. So we thought maybe it was a market. I personally thought maybe it's a market day. And, so I thought maybe people are just moving around. I didn't know that this was what was happening. So I'm sorry about the noise in the background. I'm just hiding behind the studio. So eventually, the military guy looked at us and said, "Well, if you want to risk it, it's up to you to do that." So I looked at our fixer and I said, "Let's go back." That was my first. I said, "Let's go back." So when people say you're brave and fearless, I really laugh because they don't know how many times I cry or I freak out. I said, "Let's go back." And then eventually he said, "No, we can't, Amaka. We've traveled. This is just Chibok. That's Chibok. We can't go back." And I said, "Okay." And then I asked the camera guy, my camera guy, very amazing person. I said, "What do you think?" He said, "No, let's proceed." I said a prayer in my heart and I said, "Let's proceed." And indeed we went in. So we went in, and then when we had to run anyway, we didn't go straight into Chibok. We had to run into another village, stayed for 2 hours because obviously the terrorists were attacking. So by next morning, when we had gone into Chibok safely, we heard that they had killed 40 people in that attack. That we literally just escaped it by a whisker. So that's one. I don't know if I have time to say the second one. The second one was Zamfara, when the government girls secondary school, when they were released. So the government had held them for so long, and when they brought them back to reunite them with their family members, for some reason, it just escalated into violence. Before we knew it, it descended into chaos. And there I was, my camera guy, we're all trying to get, visuals and get all of this live action. And the next thing, there was someone with a knife, literally in front of us and say, "Oh, I'm going to stab you." Thankfully, I was again dressed, normally. And I said, you can't stab us. So we want to tell your story. So if you kill us, your story will not be out, And so somehow you could already see the anger and the blood in his eyes, if I can put it that way. And somehow we were able to escape. It was chaotic. The office was calling and saying, "Oh, run into the head of village traditional ruler, run into the police station." But we couldn't even leave. There was no way because the blocks, and they said they were going to set the school on fire. I'm like, "Oh dear Lord, I'm not going to die in this place." Anyways, but somehow we came out. They damaged the car, and they struggled with some of our equipment, and eventually we came out of it. Shaken, wow. but we came out alive. So yes, things go wrong sometimes. Sorry, Jonah. I'm having a thing. Okay, things go wrong sometimes, but somehow we come out alive. Yeah.
You will always come out alive, please. And so Teresa, one thing that was quite obvious in what Amaka described was the importance of a support system for any journalist. It's very rare to see somebody, irrespective of the gender, succeeding on his or her own. So if we look at how the pandemic has played out, I remember a session that we had that specifically focused on India, and we were told about how serious it has been. Now journalists have been losing jobs. Can you look at what COVID-19 has done to journalists in India through the lens of gender? So what can you say about this?
It was very interesting listening to Amaka, and I almost could, sense it's like, yeah, there's so many things that happened to me too. I always had this feeling that, you can only be a good journalist or a bad journalist, but does your gender really come into play? Then, there are subtle ways in which your gender does come into play. And I still remember, I used to carry this grab bag. My bag had all these kind of, things which I might need for an overnight stay, because, right from a sanitary pad to, a deodorant, that can be used as a spray, and then little things like a tablet or, just a small bottle of water and something to nibble at, something to eat, biscuits, everything. So that in case I'm stranded somewhere, I have, this kind of, a kind of a grab bag that I carry with me. And, this other things about, say, covering myself, it's like, there's this unconsciously, I do that. I wear if I'm going to meet a top militant leader, I'm wearing a full sleeve shirt, and I cover myself with a scarf. It's just a uncanny thing that happens to you, just because you are a female, and anything can happen to you, and so this it's and then this whole thing about a really unvisited area is the psychological health of a journalist reporting hardcore conflict. So this is something which we don't talk about. It's very, we rarely talk about our vulnerabilities, and in my book, as I said, and I talk about how I had to seek professional help, because, after reporting, after doing a story on a very difficult story, I had to, face the wrath of the agencies, the authorities, and I was grilled repeatedly. So, and I was pregnant. I was heavily pregnant then with my second child. So I had to, seek professional help. And then that was the time when, it was just a normal day, and I started screaming at my child, and I started, hitting her. So these kind of things, then I realized that maybe I need to talk to someone. And then, I realized it's a case of a post-traumatic stress disorder. So it's very important that we talk about these things. And as you said, the network, it's very important to, now in India, we have few networks of women in media. There's a network of women in media, and there is a South Asia women in media. So these are like different networks. And in fact, the South Asia women in media have women journalists from all over South Asia. And so we talk about issues, and we talk about things which connect us. And in case somebody is in trouble, least we can do is set out a statement, protesting them. So that also matters. And it is very important. And as I said, reporting conflict can spring surprises in every step, as Amaka had just described. I've been caught in such situations many times. I was caught in a crossfire, and I could just just crouch and then look at my. I thought it was crackers, but it was like gunshots. But then, only thing I could do was call up my editor sitting in Delhi, the capital, and say that there's firing going on. He said, "Oh my God, just be careful." That's the only thing he could say. But this whole thing about safety, personal safety of a journalist, we never thought, we never think about ourselves. So it's time, I think, we should talk about our physical, not only our physical safety, but psychological health. And I have a friend, a colleague in my neighboring state, and she was shot at while she was entering her office. And I had a long discussion with her after that. And she said, she still has she has problems going through that trauma. And she said that she was in Germany for a year. There's this organization, I think well, she had a sojourn with them, and she told me that isn't it strange that there is no organization in India that could support us, support me, help me overcome my ordeal. So this kind of, it's very important to have a support system, especially while you are reporting hardcore conflict. And this support system includes psychological help, legal support, because you might end up in a legal suit. You need a network of lawyers who can help you, and the physical safety is there. And then talking about your rights, well, especially while covering COVID, I mean, many journalists died in India while doing their duty. They died. So you have to buy your own sanitizer, own mask, and there is no health insurance. And then this new thing that has come up is the digital safety, the safety of your gadgets. How many of us know, like we were talking, Stella, me, myself, like we are like digital migrants. We are new to this whole world of emerging technology. Every day new things are coming up. And we don't understand half the things, So we carry our gadgets, and like we cannot do without our phone now. But yeah. How do we take care of our phone? How do we take care of our laptop? How do we ensure that our gadgets are safe? So this kind of to save from surveillance, save from any other hacking or any kind of. So I think these are things which are emerging every day, and we need to talk about all this. And most importantly, we need to talk, and we need to. We need such conversations. I need to listen to Amaka, and Amaka maybe can listen to some of us, and we can think of ways in which we can support each other. The support is so important. Otherwise, we are all professionals. We are very good professionals. We are perfect. We are doing our work well. But then when you land up in trouble, you need a support system. This support system is so important.
Okay, still on this subject of support system, Amaka, and seeing all the tragedies and travesties that you've already seen on the front line, how do you keep your mental health? How do you handle your own mental health? And what kind of support do you still think women journalists in Nigeria and by extension elsewhere deserve and should have that are still not part of the conversation yet?
I think very critically, one of the conversations that we must begin to have, especially within organizations, is the fact that it's important to make provision for mental health care. I'm not sure how many organizations will be able to, are doing that in Nigeria currently. And so when I say mental health care, what I mean is therapy, for instance. I mean, this year alone, if I've not spent so much on therapy, which is basically going to see a counselor and go through everything that I've seen and I've heard, that trying to purge out the things in my system in terms of the trauma that I also come very close to, it would be close to 500,000. That's so because, for instance, when you go, if we go for every session of therapy, it's an hour. So an hour is about 57,000. So if each time I go out and I come in and I take off, I do that for, maybe a week. Initially I thought, oh no, I don't have to spend for that. But I realized that if I didn't do that, it's going to be the harm is enormous. So you might as well just spend that money and be alive, you know what I mean, and retain your sanity. When I came back from, if it is not, Zamfara is one of those, because I came, Kankara happened, or Kagara happened first. Kankara happened first and Kagara happened immediately. And then while we're there, Zamfara happened. So it meant I had to go. And then from Zamfara, we had to connect into Chibok because it was the 7th anniversary of, the abduction of the Chibok girls. So we had to do that back to back. I came back and then I had a nervous break. I thought I was okay. So I had my normal 2 days off. And then on the 3rd day, I was supposed to report to office, and I just couldn't, One of our managers then called me and he was trying to tell me something about an assignment or whatever. I just broke down over the phone. I started crying for no apparent reason. He didn't say any hurtful word to me. And I said, look, I think I'm having a nervous breakdown. I can't do it. I just went full blast, And so he just said, okay, that's fine. Stay away until you're able. And at that point, I had to call Mentally Aware, this group we have in Nigeria, Mentally Aware. And, then I got, because my counselor was not in the country at the time, so I got help. So I think basically that's one thing that we're not paying attention. It's a conversation that, news media outlets need to definitely have, and to make provision for that. Actually have a desk where you pay for these services. You know that if this person is doing this, you need therapy. It's not luxury, actually, and it's not a privilege. That is a need. That's one conversation that I don't see us having at all. Whether being a female journalist or if you're exposed to all of this crisis, all of this trauma, is something that we must begin to pay attention to. So for me, my best way is always therapy. I talk to, whenever I go in and come out, there are people that I just relive all of the stories, and I say, oh, do you know this person? Oh, do you know somebody calls me at 2 a.m. and crying and say, oh, journalists, do you know what, they're going to release my daughter? Try to relive all of that and make sure that my head is light, somehow, and that I'm in a good space to be able to operate. I don't see much of that happening. So I think, yes, Paul, that's a conversation that we need to drive in this part of the country, to see that it's a need and not a luxury. And when journalists are not, when someone is not, they're not able really, that, give them, take a break, however you want to do it, just take a break, go breathe. When your head is clear, then you can come on. You need to be alive, to have that political word. Yeah.
Yeah. So Teresa, same question. In addition to mental health, what do you still think? What other support system do you still think is lacking, that you believe that women journalists actually need?
As I said, women. I think women, or us, we journalists, we have devised different ways. We are very innovative, And when I talk about my own venture, the Thumbprint magazine, I started this in 8 years back, 2012. And many people ask me, why did you start the Thumbprint? So I said that, it was a very, very angry reaction. I was very angry. I was very disappointed that, since I'm not based in one of the big cities of the country, my story, I had to struggle to find space for my stories. I repeatedly, I used to send stories to the so-called national magazines or periodicals, or to, the local, the international, whatever. But, I had to struggle to find space. And that is when I decided to create my own space. And that is where I discovered, the immense possibilities of the internet. The internet has changed things. It has been a game changer, and the internet has helped us connect with people. So this is like, people often ask me, why did you call the magazine the Thumbprint? So I said that we are so tiny that we know we can't leave a dent, but at least we can leave an imprint. So it's too ambitious to call ourselves a bridge, but we are at best a scaffold trying to reach out to the world. And this internet has helped us, bridge that geographical and psychological barrier, which is so important. Like I'm talking to you now, so this geographical barrier is gone, the psychological barriers are gone. So now, this support system, we can devise new kind of support systems. It can be a global support system. It can be a, but we have to, also it can be global, local and plus global, So we have to be grounded. And as I said, this legal, psychological, physical, the infrastructure wise, and then somebody to talk to, these conversations. I think Zoom has provided us with this space, which we should make the best use of. We should be able to have more such conversations. And when you talk, you can find out new ways, can devise new ways to find out. And another thing which after this post-COVID, before I forget, there has been a series. There's this silver lining. There's been series of media fellowships that are being provided by various organizations, and especially to there's this organization called the UNFPA. They give out the media fellowship called Ladli Media Fellowship, and this is basically targeted at gender sensitive reporting, and it is mostly availed by women journalists, female journalists, and they write in different regional languages of India. So every year they give out this fellowship. So when one door is being closed, there are these layoffs. When you are losing jobs here, now there are these media fellowships where you can sit at home and work from home and do stories which are worthwhile, and stories because the pandemic is gone, but then maybe it's still there, but the long-term implications of this pandemic, how it has affected the livelihood, how it has affected the economy, how it has affected the health, education. And recently I did a story about young adolescent girls, and their education. And I went to visit one of them, these two girls, they were cousins. They lived together. I went to visit them. And when I went there, the uncle told me, oh, we married them off because they were in high school, but because school was closed and they were at home, and for the parents it was like more secure to get them married than keep them at home, and if anything happens to them, and who's going to provide for them. So it's better they go to their husband's home. So child marriage has been one big impact of the pandemic, because schools are closed. So how these things are affecting adolescent girls, how these are affecting women, they are the worst affected. So we need to, reanalyze and, look at things from a, we really need to go deep into the stories about the impact of the pandemic, especially on women and children. And this is how I think the media fellowships are really helping. They are also like a support system for journalists who are willing to go to the field and really get their feet dirty and get the stories, the real stories that matter.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Teresa. Still on the subject of opportunities, and I'm really glad that Teresa raised the issue of fellowships for women journalists. Amaka, there is also this argument that there ought to be level playing field for everybody, that everybody ought to have equal access to every opportunity. So what is your response? What is your response to those that think opportunities shouldn't be made available based on gender alone? And I would also like you to talk to the last point that Teresa made regarding the impact of the pandemic on women. And so are there any peculiar examples that you can really mention? So can you address these two issues?
Okay, Paul, I'm also pressed for time. I'm becoming a bit anxious of time now.
Yeah.
Let me begin from your second question, which is the impact of the pandemic. I mean, I'm sure there are details. I don't know whether you've seen the data that is out that says 60% of women and girls were abused during the pandemic. Definitely, the pandemic had affected the world, changed the world in many ways, but particularly We saw increase in gender-based violence. We saw increase in sexual assault and abuse of different kinds. Of course, a few men were also, some men rather were also abused. But again, on the scale, you can't quantify it. Women are most vulnerable in this, in this situation. I mean, generally, we always say that women are most vulnerable when it comes to abuse, GBV, and assault. But with the pandemic, it kind of escalated, and we saw a huge rise in that. So yes, both in Nigeria, we saw that a lot. We saw that there was a lot of teenage pregnancies as well in Nigeria during this time. Apart from the increase in gender-based violence, we particularly saw that, just like Teresa was mentioning there, a lot of people had to be married. Most people, most young girls had to live with their abusers. Before you would say, well, if a house girl, for instance, is in the house and being abused by the owner of the house, for instance, he goes out in the morning, so you don't have him to contend with until maybe whenever he's back at night. But with the pandemic, during the lockdown, it meant that some people had to be with their abusers, unfortunately. So we saw that increase as well. And your first question, remind me what your first question is again.
Okay, should opportunities be provided through gender?
Equal opportunities. And so I think it's very insensitive when people say, oh, you shouldn't get opportunity, opportunity shouldn't be given to, no. I think what I hear more these days is the fact that people say, oh, that more opportunities are being given to women, and then the men are ignored. I don't necessarily think that is the truth, because over time, even in history, we know that societies are more patriarchal. And many people are trying to change their narratives in terms of the kind of conversations we're having these days and saying, look, let's have equal opportunity for everyone. Let's have equity, whatever it is that you're talking about, whether it's finance, whether it is job, whether job distribution, whether it is opportunities, whatever it is, if anybody is qualified for it, give the person a role, irrespective of whether you're male or female. Having said that, I'm also aware that yes, because over time we've seen a society that is that is more patriarchal. There is that intentional and deliberate move to get more women, to have access to funding, for instance, opportunity, leadership, and all of that. I personally think it's a conversation that we should continue to be deliberate and intentional about. However, women should also position themselves to be ready, to be fit for purpose. So I definitely would not want to get a role of another person if I'm not prepared for that role. So what definitely I would do, what I do all the time is, trying to equip myself, trying to grow, trying to make myself better, so that, when such opportunities come my way, I wouldn't be saying, oh, well, I'm not so qualified, oh, I'm not fit for it. Instead of facing the truth, that the fact that, oh, you're not qualified, oh, I'm not fit, then want to play that card of, oh, because I'm a woman. I think sometimes we just play that card, but it's not necessary. What is necessary is get yourself ready at all times so that to be fit for purpose. And I also don't agree that people should, be discriminated against in terms of opportunities because of their gender. If a man is qualified for a role and he's the only person who can do it, why not? If a woman is qualified for a role and she's the only person who can do it, why not? For me, it's about getting yourself ready, and as much as you can, get all that you need in terms of resources, in terms of knowledge, in terms of exposure, in terms of all that you really need, so to say, to be able to deliver, so that when you get into that position, it wouldn't be a question of, oh, women wanted to take the role, now we've given them the role, they're not able to deliver. So put your best foot forward, I would say, and be ready to take up opportunities, because there's so many of them about. And I can also see that people are intentional these days, in trying to put women in positions, strategic and leadership positions as well. So let's make it count for.
Okay.
Well, I would like to add here, I know of a female journalist in one of the television channels of my city. She had to lose her job because she was pregnant. They said that, oh, we cannot have a pregnant woman here, and we don't have provision. Though legally there should be provisions of maternity leave in any kind of institution, any kind of organization. They said that, no, sorry, we don't need people like you. I mean, she had to quit. She was made to quit. So there was a uproar over it. But then, think this kind of things, when you talk about opportunities for women, unfortunately, women, so there are no provisions of maternity leave in many of the media organizations, and even a separate toilet for women. I know of a media house, one of the top media houses here, and this very senior journalist, a lady, she told me, I hold on, I don't go to the toilet because there's only one toilet in the whole office, and I feel embarrassed and I don't go. I was surprised that people are not even, and I said, you are a journalist, you should be talking about it, you should be raising your voice. But she's like, and she has to keep her job. So, so when you talk about gender, this, as I said, you can only be a good journalist or a bad journalist, but when you come to see these kind of things, you realize that your gender comes into play. And when I mentioned this media fellowship here, it can be availed by men too, but they have to write stories with a gender lens. They have to look at the story with a gender lens. So when you don't talk about the woman, when you write a story, when you you look at our newspapers, you look at the sports pages, you feel like only men play sports. You look at the financial pages, the economic pages, you feel as if money is handled only by men. Where are the women? So these women are missing from our media, from our pages. They are only there in the special women pages, or unless they are doing something extraordinarily well. So I think, as Amaka had said, it's very important that we talk about, and we need such conversations again and again, and we have to ensure that we come to a level playing field, and it's important to.
As a wrap up, Amaka, what do you think should be the key message going from there? And what are your last remarks that you think we've not mentioned that you'd like us to know?
I think basically captured everything, Paul, and this session is also very interesting. Having the opportunity to be speaking with very seasoned journalists like Teresa Rehman is a privilege. My pattern words really would be, it doesn't sound correct in English grammar, but I think it does make sense, and this is what it is. Keep bettering your best. So if you think you're doing fantastically well, you just might want to add more to that. So, wherever we find ourselves, whichever bit you are, whether conflict, whether you're doing the amazing work that Teresa is doing, or the amazing work that you are doing, Paul, we keep bettering our best because, again, to remain relevant, you have to be intentional in making yourself relevant, positioning yourself in such a way that indeed you remain relevant, because times are changing. Journalism as we see it today is different from when my mother practiced, you know what I mean? So we are now in technology is even helping us to have this conversation. In time past, we didn't have that. So that has also affected the way we tell our stories, the way we, do things in the media industry now. So I would say, better your best. And whoever you're called to be, irrespective of the challenges that are there, you will still have to be, because you're passionate about that, because that is almost like second nature. So when people ask me how I do these things, Paul, I do not know. We just have to do it because you have to do it.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Amaka. But before I ask for your own last remarks, Teresa, something that I really like about your structure is your diversification. You've moved from a journalist to an editor to a media entrepreneur. So what do you think, what do you advise female journalists that are also interested in venturing into media entrepreneurship and running their own shows? Teresa?
Well, Paul, there's this new concept called solutions journalism. Solution journalism. So I think there's a solution for everything, and we have to make the best of what we have. And now I think internet has provided, immense possibilities. So media is so diverse now. Media is emerging now. If you want, you can start your own podcast channel. If you want, you can start your own news portal. And you can start with little funds, and then try to look for funds. And I know funding is a big issue, but then there is a solution for everything. It's like make use of, I think we'll have to move with technology is the future. So and I know it's not easy being an entrepreneur, but I for me it was more of a, as I said, it's more of a it's a kind of a responsibility that I have on my shoulders, because I feel that my region is not being represented enough, and I need to create a space for my region. So, and then, so whether you are a male or a female, it's like, it's important to get the stories out. It's important to tell the stories well. Once I attended a session with students, and they said, they talked about modern media. I said, what is modern media? Just using an expensive iPhone is not modern. What you write, what you tell in your story, that should be modern. That should be the something new. You have to be able to give something new to the world. So that is what, making use of the technology. But even if you use just a pen and a paper or an expensive iPad, it's the content. The content is king. The content is important. So I think we have a lot of stories waiting to be told. Especially my region, it's a paradise for journalists. So I just feel that we should tell our stories. Just tell our stories, and not wait for others to tell our stories. That's it. You're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. So how do you think COVID-19 has shaped journalism in general, especially for women? And what are your expectations for women in journalism, especially in India in the nearest future?
As I said, COVID-19 has changed the whole media dynamics. So now, as I said, for women, when you're talking about women, like working from home, I think media fellowships, if you can avail of this media fellowships, it's an ideal way to keep yourself busy and tell your stories at the same time. And using technology like podcasting. Podcasting is really big now, especially because of the pandemic. Podcasts have really come up in India. And then vlogging, starting your own YouTube channels. I know of many women who have started their own YouTube channels and are recording their daily life, their personal life, every day, what they're doing. So it might seem trivial to many. It might seem like, okay, what is she doing? She's like cooking her breakfast, and then she's making trying out a new recipe, and all those traditional recipes. But then that is, I feel, it's an ethnographic documentation. Any kind of documentation is better than having nothing at all. So I think women all over, in remote villages, they've started their own YouTube channels, and they're telling their stories. I know of this lady, young girl, who lives in a state called Arunachal Pradesh, which is like close to the China border. And she studies in a college, which is like, and it takes her 3 days to go to her village by road. It's a road trip, 3 days road trip. And it's a very bad road. And what I was going through her YouTube channel, and I saw she filmed the entire journey, and using her mobile phone. And then when I said that, this, I can't, it's so amazing. It's this entire journey was so fascinating even for me as an Indian. She said that, so these are the stories you won't find in mainstream media. And I wanted to show the world that, someday somebody will chance upon my YouTube channel and see, okay, okay, this is this young girl who goes to college, who goes home from college for her holidays, and it takes her 3 days, and that journey, so she filmed it, and she just used her phone. So devices, this kind of technology, and every day new technologies are emerging, and I think we just have to make the best of what we have. So this is what I believe. Solution, to find a solution for everything. There's every problem has a solution. So yeah, I think that's
yeah, thank you very much, Teresa. And unfortunately, we have actually gotten beyond the time allotted for this conversation. I'm really happy for the positive note on which we are actually ending this session, which is solutions. And I also appreciate one thing that you actually made quite obvious, which is access to technology. Mobile technology has actually expanded the frontiers of journalism, that everyday persons can actually now start telling stories, providing an opportunity for us to have a fuller perspective of what people's lives look like and what their peculiar challenges are, thus resonating and potentially reaching those that ought to bring about the desired change. So I'm really, really appreciative of your contributions in this conversation, and I'm really happy that this is not something that ends now, but something that will continually evolve, and which shows actually that we cannot say that we are practicing journalism by not even encouraging anyone and everyone to be the best at what they do. So I would like to appreciate you once again for joining, for accepting our invitation, and for sharing your insights with us. I also like to appreciate Amaka Okoye for being phenomenal too. And as the two of you report and go about your practices in journalism, I wish you the best of luck. I hope you continue to keep safe so that we can always consult you and tap from your wealth of experience. So if you are joining us and you would like to know more about the International Center for Journalism, for journalists, please visit www.icfj.org. The International Center for Journalists will also encourage you to check out more resources about journalism, how you can improve your journalism skills and expand the frontiers for your reporting by checking out even additional access to new opportunities in your career by visiting www.ijnet.org. And I encourage you to be part of our forum by joining the Facebook group forum. Both Amaka and Teresa, they are members of the forum. So if you want to connect with them, if you want to interact with them, I encourage you to be part of the Facebook forum by going to Facebook and searching for the International ICFJ Global Health Crisis Reporting Forum.